So do you like movies, Eric?
Yeah. What have we been talking about for the past 2 years?
So I know I'm a little late to the game on this, which means that you're even later. But MoviePass is this thing that I think is really, really cool.
Popperation is brought to you by MoviePass.
But here's the sad truth: we're not.
Wouldn't it
They
be great
haven't
if we
given
were?
us a damn dime. But I'm going to sit here and tell you that it's really, really the coolest thing.
Okay, what is it? Tell me.
So basically, you go on MoviePass.com.
Okay.
And for one price, it's kind of like Amazon Prime. You pay for a price for free shipping. You pay one price, and you get you can go to as many movies as you want to.
Okay, what's the price?
It was like $70 or $80.
That's not bad.
For a year of free movie. I mean, not free, but I mean, actually, you get your money's worth out of, I don't know, 7 or 8.
Yeah, and most of the chains that we go to, the movie chains around here,
and Regal and AMC are a part of it, and then Landmark is a part of it.
Wow, I go to see a lot of movies.
And all you have to do now, you have to be within 100 yards of the movie theater when you click onto it, because you get an app. It's on an app on your phone, and it's also this little credit card. So basically, you get within 100 yards of the movie theater, the movie you want to see. You push, I want to check in, I want to do that. Movie phone then moves the money to this special charge card you have. It looks like a credit card in your wallet. You then go to the movie theater, and they zip your charge card because it has the money on it. And then you can put in your rewards. If you have a rewards number or whatever, you can tell them your phone number and they'll put it there. So you get all the points for it.
Wow.
For the movie or whatever. But what it does for me is it frees me up to see stuff that might be on the bubble. I might not go see that because I don't want to spend the money. But you've already spent the money. But in essence, it feels like it's free. So you feel like, if I have the time, I can spend 2 hours on that.
Okay, so I've learned 2 things today.
What have you learned?
1, I think I want to get a MoviePass. And 2, we should do ads on this show.
We need sponsors.
People should be calling us and saying, please talk about our products because you're so persuasive.
Attention, attention. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to operating room 1. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to operating room 1. Surgery is about to begin.
This is Popperation. I'm Stacey.
I'm Eric.
And it is not 1976.
We are going in the way, way, way back machine.
We're going to do that. This is a movie, though, that I do think, because, again, this season is kind of about stuff we think it might be good for you to see, or at least fun to see. This is about a movie that I do think people should see because it was very crystal ball-y.
Yeah.
And it was called Network.
It reminds me a lot. We did the very last show we did of season 1 was about a movie called Wag the Dog, which also told the future in a very creepy kind of way. This one was even older than that.
Yes. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what was going on because there are going to be some people who weren't around in 1976.
I was 5.
Yeah, exactly. You weren't cognizant of what was going on. Inflation, and you may hear this word, but that was like, I remember, and I was a kid, but that was the word everybody was using, that everything costs so much, and it had gone up so, it seemed so quickly.
Yeah.
So inflation was a really big issue, and it was worldwide, not just here. The Concorde was this airplane that was the fastest airplane. It no longer runs, but it cut transatlantic flying time to 3.5 hours. So from America to Europe in 3.5 hours. It was huge. It was mind-blowing.
Does it just take a lot of gas? Why doesn't it go anymore? Because I can't get to Europe in 3.5 hours today.
Oh, okay. And people, they just didn't have the people. Because
makes sense.
Yeah, it was not fiscally wise to keep it going.
Gotcha.
Okay. In South Africa, the South African riots in Soweto marked the beginning of the end of apartheid. And there may be those who don't remember when there was apartheid in South Africa, but it was huge. It was something that was being fought for years and years and years. This was the beginning. 1976, this was the beginning of the end of that. NASA unveiled the first space shuttle.
Wow.
I know. Patty Hearst was found guilty of armed robbery in San Francisco. Now, here's who she was. She was the heiress to the Hearst publishing empire.
Yep.
She was in her early to mid-20s. She was kidnapped by the Symbionese Lebanese, the SLA.
Yeah.
Something
Liberation Army.
And then she was caught on camera several months later with the SLA robbing a bank.
Yeah.
And so once she was freed from her kidnapping, she was then put on trial for robbing the bank. Yeah. She was found guilty.
She is the poster child for Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, most definitely. Look her up. It's fascinating. She was found guilty, had a 7-year sentence. President Carter did grant her clemency. The National Basketball Association and the American Basketball Association merged to just be the NBA.
The American what?
Exactly. You didn't even know they existed. The first class of women was inducted to the Naval Academy in Annapolis. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in New York City, Son of Sam serial killer was just started his terrorizing. He just started his murders.
Yeah.
And California's sodomy law was repealed.
Oh, California. You can always count on them.
And meanwhile, on the other coast, New Jersey legalized casinos in Atlantic City. Yay!
Oh,
I don't
good.
know.
Yeah, Atlantic City.
Yeah.
You know.
So that
alcoholic
was
Disneyland for the East Coast.
That was what was going on. And this movie was about news.
Yeah. So what was happening in the news in 1976 was that there were 3 networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS. That was it in 1976. And the news was on for a half an hour a day.
Well, it would be you'd have the 6 o'clock and the 10 o'clock.
And the 10 o'clock news. But they were essentially repeats of one another.
And it was 30 minutes of time.
If anything broke in between those times, you'd hear something new on the late news. But, for the most part, you got the national news was on for, a half an hour segment at a time. And that was it. There were no 24-hour news networks where people and pundits and prognosticators just...
That wasn't a job.
That wasn't a thing.
They could be an editorial writer for a newspaper, but they were not on TV.
Yeah, you would see op-eds in the newspaper, and that's why you needed a newspaper. You couldn't get all of your news necessarily from TV. If you wanted to be more informed and get a richer experience, you would do that. But on the news, you only had a half an hour, so you just said, hey, folks, here's what happened today. And there was
the big ones.
Yeah, and it was just big kind of here's what happened, and not only less opinion, but less here's what could potentially happen next. It was just
there was no prognostication.
Here's what happened. Walter Cronkite was the anchor for CBS, and he was just the most trusted man in America. When he said,
people called him.
Yeah, when he said that this happened, it happened, and no matter what your political beliefs or ideology, Walter Cronkite said it. You believed it because it was true, because he wouldn't editorialize and he wouldn't, and none of the networks did. And what is so stunning about this movie is that this movie really did peer into this crystal ball, and it was a satire that basically posed the question, what awful things could happen if news became entertainment?
Well, I think a lot, and even journalists today, the good ones, the idea was that journalism and the journalists have to be objective. You are reporting what's going on or what has gone on. You are not editorializing. You are not coloring it with your opinion. Mm-hmm. You are not saying this is right or this is wrong. You are just informing the public of what is going on and that you're objective.
I feel like what we know now in 2018 is that people are just not objective. And so even if you are just saying the facts, if you decide to leave out a fact because you don't think it's germane, well, somebody else might think it was germane, and they might think that you are, so it's impossible, I think, to be completely objective, but I think that the news in the 70s got a lot closer to that ideal, a lot closer than we are right now.
Here's what I would say. Yes, I agree. I don't think they can be. And if you watch Walter Cronkite reporting that John F. Kennedy had been shot, you'll see some subjectivity there going on.
Yes.
He was brought to tears, which threw the country into a storm because Walter Cronkite never cried.
I know.
That was craziness. So, but that is what news was. And it was not a moneymaker for any network.
No, it was a public service.
Correct. So this is a movie. Network was a movie directed by Sidney Lumet. He directed 12 Angry Men. Peter Fonda, Jack Lemmon.
Yep.
He directed Dog Day Afternoon.
Al Pacino. Chris Sarandon.
I forgot about him.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. It was written by Patty Chayefsky, who never shied away from controversy.
No.
He wrote Marty with Ernest Borgnine.
Yep.
He also wrote Altered States.
Didn't see it.
It was Natalie Wood and William Hurt. Yeah. Funky. It's a weird one. Anyway, so basically the plot of Network, clearly it takes place at a network, is that you have...
it's a fourth network, first of all. UBS is a fictional
network.
Fictional fourth network.
Yeah, it's not at ABC, CBS, or NBC. It's at UBC is the name of it. And
UBC, UBS.
What did I say? I'm sorry, UBS. So Peter Finch plays this Walter Cronkite kind of guy.
Yep. He's
been there for a long time. He's been in journalism since the 50s. His buddy, William Holden, has also been there since the 50s, and William Holden is the director of news at UBS.
Max.
Max. Yep. So what happens is that money, again, inflation, money is a big thing, and suddenly the news department is being asked to not be in the hole so much. William's like, well, I don't know what you want us to do. News is news. Well, they say, well, we're going to get somebody younger. We're going to get somebody else to do the news because Peter Finch is too old.
Yeah.
And so Howard is too old. So they leave it to William to tell him, say, Howard, tell him he's fired. He tells Howard he's fired. Howard goes on the air that night and then proceeds to tell the audience, by the way, I'm going to kill myself later on air. So watch.
Stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
That'll get the ratings, damn it.
Well, of course, the network is like crazed, but they then decide they're going to let him go on and see what'll happen.
Well, he promises. He says,
he says, I'm not really going to.
I'm not, and I was upset, and
right.
you
and he's
just
throw me for a loop. That's what it was. They want him to go on and apologize.
And I really want to end my career with dignity. Right. Please let me do this.
So William believes him and lets him go on there. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, you have Robert Duvall, a very young Robert Duvall. Well, everybody's young in this except William Holden and Peter Finch. But Robert Duvall is one of the upstarts trying to become the next network president.
Sure.
And you have Faye Dunaway as this woman go-getter business person who is very ambitious.
Yes.
And she is the director of the programming, the entertainment portion. They decide...
She's a hard-driving career woman who will never have children and therefore has no soul.
Okay, we're going to get to that later. But yes, he's just said it in a nutshell. So, in the meantime, basically the deal is she and Robert Duvall say, hey, why don't we take this personality that Howard has become? Because Howard's angry. He's mad that he's old and that they want to get rid of him. He's mad that he feels like news and the world and America are all going to hell anyway.
Mm-hmm.
He's mad as hell, and he's not going to take it anymore, and he thinks everybody should be the same. And that really, he said this on the air, and that really resonated with the audience, and the ratings go through the roof.
Yep.
And so if you've ever heard the cliche, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, this is the movie it came from.
And it's actually an incredible scene. When he says into the camera, I want everyone to go to their window and shout into the void, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Then it cuts to William Holden watching this at home with his family. And suddenly one of his kids goes to the window and he says, what are you doing? He says, I want to see if anyone's doing it. And they are.
Yes.
People all over the city are opening up their windows and screaming into the void, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. So clearly he's tapped into something in the zeitgeist.
So that Faye Dunaway says, this is great. Let's give him his own show. So she does that. In the meantime, you have this whole William Holden's trying to hold on to what is journalism really? What are we doing here? Yep. She's trying to make money and keep it going. William's also trying to make sure that his friend doesn't kill himself because the guy's clearly unstable. Then you also have William Holden and Faye Dunaway have this weird affair, which we'll talk about a little later as well. So the whole idea is basically turning news programming into entertainment for the masses for money.
And this, in 1976, was called, and it's a satire. It is
It's also fiction at the time.
Yes.
It was one of those that was so out there that everybody said, "Oh, Patty, you're a crazy writer. How did you come up? This is craziness. This would never happen."
I mean, they loved it, but they did say, "Wow, what a great, this is really, if you took this germ of a disturbing idea to the nth degree, just for the sake of our entertainment so we can go to the movies and watch this is how nutty and crazy this could be." You watch this in 2018 and this is our life. We're living it.
You sit there and you go, "Holy crap. Holy crap." It was that long ago that somebody was thinking and predicting that this could happen.
Yeah.
And then it did. It's hard to watch. I found it hard to watch. I'll be honest with you. Not because there were some other things that were hard to watch, but my main issue with it was because it was what we were.
Yeah.
And it was framed as a nightmare situation.
And it's what we're living. Yeah.
But because it happened so slowly, it's what do they call it, nose blind in those commercials that the teenagers in his room with all the stinky socks and underwear, and he doesn't know it stinks because it happened so gradually. But anybody who walks in is like, "What the hell happened here?" That's kind of where we are.
Yeah. So basically, we're surrounded by stinky sweat socks in our life, and we have no idea how much we stink.
We're nose blind.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a minute. The setup for the plot, Eric, but that really isn't everything that happens.
It was about the first half of the movie that you set up for us.
And then it's just crazy what happens after that.
It just spirals into all kinds of craziness that we shouldn't spoil for folks, even though the movie is from 1976.
No, I don't want to spoil it because I really do think people should see this.
Exactly.
Especially in 2018. Yeah. I think it would be great if one of the networks would air it.
Well, it would be great if one of the networks would air it because it might actually convince people to turn their 24-hour news networks off and start watching the network news for a half an hour a day again. It's a great commercial for that, actually.
Yeah. So in the cast was amazing. Faye Dunaway.
Who was the it girl of 1976. So you watch this, and I kind of had to remind myself that, Faye Dunaway, who I see, and I see her screaming about wire hangers in the middle of the night. That's just kind of who Faye Dunaway has become for me because I'm a big old homosexual and I've seen Mommy Dearest like 18 times. So you have to remind yourself that Faye Dunaway was the, what Angelina Jolie was in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
Faye Dunaway was in the 70s. Who is that person now? I don't even know. What Charlize Theron was in the early 2000s.
There's so many. Yeah, I mean, you've got Emma Stone. You've got a lot of people out there right now.
But Faye Dunaway was the most glamorous, the most beautiful woman on the planet. And when you see that that's why they cast her for this role, a lot of things about the movie that didn't quite make sense to me make a little bit more sense. It's an old movie.
She was very good in it, and she actually won an Oscar.
She did. She won an Oscar.
So, just an FYI. William Holden, which I will tell you right now, I always liked William Holden.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that in his heyday, I wasn't even a twinkle in my parents' eye.
No.
Okay? But I always, and I
Picnic. He was so sexy.
He was, but neither of us was born when that literally came out. This was when he was at, kind of that whole dad stage at this point, that age. And
he was craggy.
I loved him, man. I understood Stephanie Powers. She was with him forever. And, I understood if William Holden called me at whatever age I was, I would go. Yeah. I loved him so much.
No, he was handsome, but craggy. He looked like a really upstanding news guy.
Voice.
Yes, and he's got a very sexy voice.
I loved him. Peter Finch plays Howard, the one who goes off the deep end. I'm not spoiling anything there. He also won an Oscar, but it was posthumously. He actually died before.
He did. I think he would have won anyway.
I think so too.
I think this was it was an over the top performance that you have to commit to in order for it to go well.
You do.
Because, and he did.
You cannot hesitate with what you either go all the way or don't do it at all.
Yeah, you couldn't phone this in to save your life. And if you tried, you'd look ridiculous. And so I think he cinched the Oscar when he passed away before the ceremony because everyone really wanted to honor him and they lost a big leg. But I think this performance, this would have won no matter what.
Robert Duvall played a total ass. He was just a slimy, gross thing.
Robert Duvall plays asshole really well.
He really does.
He really does. He's probably a great guy, but he plays assholes really well.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about him. I think he's probably, and I've heard he's really good to work with and stuff like that. But he's a jerk in this. He's a total jerk, but young. It's very fun watching him, looking at him be young. Ned Beatty plays the owner of the network.
He's like the Rupert Murdoch.
Yes. He was weird. Ned Beatty can play some weird shit.
It is, and he doesn't show up until the movie's well into its second half.
Maybe 10 minutes at most.
And he shows up later. I mean, after we're already into, we've gone to Oz at this point in terms of how crazy. Yeah, and he shows up and amps up the crazy, if anything.
He totally.
And he's a perfect person to do that because he can play weird and unsettling.
He can play. Well, what he does is he plays this seemingly normal businessman, and then on a dime you see the scene, which I'm not going to spoil.
No.
Which takes you to another level, and I remember looking at my house watching, and he goes into the conference room, and then suddenly I'm looking around my house, my couch to make sure I'm still in my house. It's a freaky scene. That is one of the weirdest. And I'm like, did I take any drugs? No, I didn't. Why is this happening? It's a weird scene.
And I will also not spoil the scene, but it is a scene between him and Peter Finch. And
Correct.
Peter Finch, who has been screaming and foaming at the mouth for 2 hours, is all of a sudden in the scene with Ned Beatty, who could not be quieter.
It was
as he says the freakiest shit you've ever.
Say anything else.
No, I won't.
I won't. Crazy scene. But Ned Beatty did it, and he did it literally. He spins on a dime from this normal businessman person to this.
And it's great.
Beatrice Straight plays William Holden's wife. She also won an Oscar
for one scene.
Yes.
At the time,
basically for one scene. She had more than one scene.
She had more than one scene, but she won it. You know what the Oscar scene is.
Yes.
There's one scene in the movie, and we've already kind of given up. Okay, William Holden ends up having an affair with Faye Dunaway, and Beatrice Straight plays William Holden's wife. And so when
he does eventually tell her, and she gets to go through literally every emotion known to man in a 5-minute period.
And some of her reactions are unexpected. She just doesn't play spurned woman for 8 minutes.
No, she's not cliche at all. She did a very nice job of going all the way, because that was a hard scene. And I'll talk about the relationship thing later, but that was a hard scene to do for her and not come off as just a typical.
The script helped her out, I think. I mean, the script lets her take a lot of different
really good writer
places, so she got to kind of explore lots of avenues of basically she goes through all stages of grief in this 8-minute scene that she's in. Right. And I think at the time it held the record for the shortest performance to win an Oscar. I think Judi Dench took that away from her when she won for Shakespeare in Love. Later on, because she was on screen for even less time.
Right, exactly.
But it is a thing where, the entire movie, could you have cut Beatrice Straight out of this movie?
Hell
probably. Yes. It would be a lesser movie because of it. She did make a big impact in those 8 minutes, and it really kind of made you, and we're going to talk about, the relationship. It made you sad that William Holden was doing this.
The choices he made.
Yeah.
So the movie, I like this movie. It was hard to watch this time. I mean, it was very, very difficult.
I'd never seen it before.
Had you not?
No.
I had seen it. I'd seen it in the theater. My dad had taken me. I was a kid. So watching it then and watching it now is obviously, I mean, there's two people could have been born between then and now. But to me, the best parts of it is that Patty was so smart, and that he was able to, and I'm always jealous. a little envious of people who are able to, the science fiction stuff. If you can see, this is where we are now, but you can then envision where we might go. And then later on, it's proven that you were right.
Yeah.
We did actually go there. H.G. Wells, shit like that. Patty did this. It's sad that I'm having to live in this dystopian nightmare, but the fact that he was able to foresee, just based on what was going on there, is amazing.
But it's also it's good, I think, in a way that this movie reminds us how fucked up our media is.
And how far we've come.
Yes. Where
we've come from where the word news started. I also think that there's this weird kind of ambivalence in that Howard, Peter Finch's character, he's a victim, but then he's a manipulator. I mean, it's like, where does he fall on this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very gray area. But again, when you change news to entertainment, when you change journalist to entertainer, it's going to get fuzzy.
Well, and in a way, I think what's even creepier about what we're living through now is that I almost felt like the Howard Beale show, what stopped being the UBS Evening News and became the Howard Beale show. He's standing up with a big studio audience who is doing lots of call and response and lots of cheering. He's against this backdrop of something that reminds you of a stained glass window. So he kind of like puts him in the role of a preacher behind a pulpit. And then he's got you never see any of the side acts on his show, but he's got like the psychic woman and then some other
Those kind of, hysterical, and somebody who spins the wheel. And
she looks like a magician's assistant. Yeah.
Different segments of his show.
So the Howard Beale show is this whole kind of cooked up weird thing. What is happening now is that the people who are actually running the real life Howard Beale shows today are still sitting behind a very staid anchor's desk, wearing their suit and tie with the corporate logo kind of behind them. And it doesn't look insane. It's just you watch Network Now and you go, oh, we're basically watching this. Like, this is what's on TV now. Right. We just don't know it because at least Patty said this is how insane it will look, too. And it doesn't look that crazy.
It doesn't look insane. They are trying to keep the idea that we're not insane. They didn't want it to look insane because it would lose credibility was the idea. Whereas in 76, he was like, well, it won't matter what you put up there because people will still watch.
There's this brilliant guy named Carlos Maza, M-A-Z-A. And he does a bunch of videos for Vox. And he did a video recently about how the guy who ran ESPN recently took over CNN. And CNN started to be run very much like ESPN was run before. Now, ESPN is also, delivering factual information, but it's all about sports. Correct. So it's kind of, so it's they were doing, they were doing entertainment reporting for a long time, but how he brought all the things that worked from ESPN into CNN. So basically it was hype up the drama, get people yelling at each other. It doesn't matter that people are more informed after they watch your program or not. What's important is they had an emotional, visceral experience.
Well, what's important is that they come back again and that we have advertisers who pay us money.
And they're hooked, right? Because that emotional experience gets you hooked and you want to come back and watch more and more. So I feel like, so check out, Carlos's, video around this. In fact, I'll see if I can find it and actually put it on our Facebook page, so you can watch it along with this episode. But this is yet another way, like Carlos did, this movie also kind of reminds you, it's like, this is what happens when we turn our news into entertainment, is that, not only is it just all fucked up in all kinds of ways behind the scenes, we are less informed. As a citizenry, we don't have the fourth estate just really starts to crumble because in a way journalism is supposed to be kind of a check on those in power.
Very much so.
And what you find out through this movie is that the people who have the power, the people who have the money, that's the real danger of all this stuff, is that they are controlling what we know.
Correct.
And once you start making money and ratings the determining factor of what you're going to put on the news, then you are controlled in a way that you have no idea. You're completely blind to it. And the way that's presented in Chayefsky's vision in 1976 is so fucking scary. And hello, this is the world we live in. Probably. And we have no idea. We might not have any idea.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say that, when you watch Network and they get to Howard's show, and it is all of this props and all of this costuming and the audience out there and the people saying, clap now, applause now, and all of that. And you feel like that's what it should look like. But again, we've got the same crazy wearing a suit and tie.
Yeah. Yep.
I did have a question of who is Ned Beatty's character. I mean, and in a way, he is the owner of the network and thus the bottom line. So that would be any corporation, I suppose, is who he is. But also going back at how is, again, I go back to how did Patty know? How was he able to see what was going on then? Because when it came out, I swear to God, everybody was shocked and stunned, and they're like, this is so science fiction. We never thought it would happen.
Well, it was well received, so I do think they knew, even though they didn't think that this was our life right now in 76, they thought it was a really well-crafted warning of where we don't want to go. I think watching it, as an old movie in 2018, clearly we didn't listen to what Patty had to tell us because we just went there.
So yeah, it's a crazy. It's so many crazy things happen in this movie, and it's very 70s. I do think it ages well in that. Although here's what I'm going to say. Here's a question. I think it ages well, but that's because we have lived out what we thought was fiction into its being reality. If journalism was still as objective as we like to think it was back in Cronkite's day, would it have aged well? I don't know. We would have said this was a lovely little fiction piece.
Yeah, and it might have just been, hopefully, we won't ever find a place in our society where we're actually conducting Hunger Games.
Right.
And that movie might still be entertaining to watch as a dystopian kind of futuristic kind of
they
a
were
thing.
Nuts back then.
But it won't.
70s.
But it wouldn't be as scary.
Which
it
is
would
what
still
it is
be.
now.
Yeah, it is.
It is really, really, really. Now, what didn't work? There were particulars of it that I didn't feel worked as well.
Yeah.
One of them, and you already mentioned this, was Faye as the hard-bitten, ambitious young woman who is willing to do literally anything or anyone to get ahead. I felt it was her character, which is what was kind of surprising when I realized I'd forgotten that she won an Oscar for it. It's hard. It was very one-sided to me, very one-dimensional.
Yes.
Barely two-dimensional. It certainly wasn't three-dimensional.
Well, I do think that it was, the first time that you see she and William Holden have sex, all the way to climax, she's talking business the entire time. In fact, she has an orgasm discussing ratings.
That's what turns her on.
So this is a satire. I think that, again, because the movie got it so right, I think we're sometimes missing just how nutty this was supposed to be. I think in the 70s, that scene might have made people laugh.
Oh, I'm sure it did. No, that's not my point. My point is, though, she is a bit of a stereotype.
Sure.
She is. So for me, it's a bit misogynistic.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you've got William Holden has all these complex things going. Yep. Well, that's because Paddy Chayefsky was a middle-aged man when he wrote it.
Yeah.
And so he really gets what white middle-aged men are doing. Whereas this young woman, he didn't know how to write for her at all, in my opinion.
No,
he just picked a cliche, and that's kind of how it went.
And yet I think he can write for women. He did a brilliant job writing for Beatrice Straight for an 8-minute scene and let her do a lot of things that were, I really think that was some good writing. I think that, this is more of a satire than we experience it being. And so therefore the stuff that's a little over the top, we don't see it as over the top. And you're absolutely correct.
Well, I do think that Beatrice is Straight, that scene was a little over the top too. I don't know that I say it as it's brilliantly written as you do.
Well,
I'll throw that.
Yeah. I think she's a much better written character.
It? The actor, the Oscar, sure. If you're going to give awards, she did a really, really good job. But again, it was still a kind of a cliche.
Yeah.
I
agree with you that she was introduced as ambitious career woman, not
she
married,
didn't wear a bra.
No interest in.
She didn't wear a bra.
no interest in having a family, and doesn't wear a bra.
Yes.
Therefore, that's all we need to tell you, and you know she's evil, right? You get it, 1976
Correct.
audience? She's evil.
Yeah.
And that's, I think today that wouldn't necessarily fly. We'd want to know a little bit more about her.
But she wasn't real. There was parts that I was like, I didn't believe that she was real.
And from the very beginning, she's listening to these pitches, even before she gets involved in news. When you just meet her for the first time, she's in a meeting with Conchata Ferrell, who ended up on ER, the comedy. Like, I was like, who is that? I had to look her up and go, oh my God. She
ended up on Two and a Half Men.
Okay. Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, you see some faces in there and you're like, huh? And she's hearing pitches for possible just entertainment programming that is completely bizarre and over the top. And by the way, there's a whole sequence in this movie where there's another character who's an heiress who's been taken up by a cult and is now robbing banks. It's very clearly a Patty Hearst
that go on into this whole.
But what she's willing to do to get them on TV just to make money is insane. So it's one-sided in that she's just a bad person.
Right,
she's
but my whole point is that not
person.
Everybody in this film is only one-sided.
No, it is, and she is.
She is. The one female lead is very much. Now, also, here's what I want to say. Did she and William Holden, did they have to have an affair? I felt that was useless to me.
I felt that it was a symbolic choice. The only on Patty Chayefsky's part
is to say she will have an affair with anybody. She doesn't care, and also she has orgasms. Business is what gets her off.
Well, and I think that in a way, he symbolized news. She symbolized entertainment, and their affair was everything that's wrong with the world as far as Patty Chayefsky could see it as far as making this movie. I think that was his point.
He was also the old school, and she was, in theory, the new school.
Yeah, and so them sleeping together and him leaving his wife to be with her, while I didn't find it believable for a second.
No, I didn't.
Not for a hot minute did I think that this would actually happen, but that's where I go to again with over-the-top satire. And remembering that she was the it girl of the time. I think that if you had cast, if this was done in the in the early 2000s, and it was Charlize Theron in that role, and we had all been programmed to see her as the woman that any man would just fall over for, that it was just a little harder for me to see Faye Dunaway in that role, just because to me, like, that just
isn't who she is.
It's not who she is to me.
Right.
And so I think in 1976, for that audience, of course William Holden would leave his wife for Faye Dunaway. Any red-blooded American man would leave his wife for Faye Dunaway. That was kind of the where they were going.
Yeah, I just didn't know what that affair did on any level, but.
I think it was symbolism. I really do. I think it was news and entertainment started to fuck, and this is what's the problem with the world right now. I mean, that's literally what he was trying to do, is just he was being a little heavy-handed. Yeah. And this is it's brilliant in that it tells the future. You're right. It has a narrator, for crying out loud. There are voiceovers that just kind of pop in and say, this is the story we're trying to tell you. And did it serve the characters? No. Did it help Patty make his point? Maybe.
I guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Final diagnosis in a minute.
We are back. Before we wrap up this episode with our final diagnoses, one of the reasons why Stacey and I decided to do this is because we had a lot of fun at cast parties talking about pop culture.
Correct.
And one of the things we always used to do is play this little game that we never really called anything, but we'll call it the Casting Couch today. And it's where you kind of say, if you were making this movie today, who would you cast? And it's just a kind of a fun way to kind of get into what did you think about these characters, and also just kind of,
why not?
Why not? So we are going to really quickly go through the 6 main roles in this movie, and just very quickly just kind of name the part, and then each of us are going to say who we would cast and a little bit about why. And if one of us hates the other person's choices, we might fight about it a little bit, but not long. Just really quickly, if we were going to make a movie today that was Network 2018, who would we cast? Now, I think Network kind of, it begs for a remake in a way.
Sort of. I mean, I feel like we're living it. I feel like we're living it, and so I don't. That's where I go. Is I want escapism. I don't want to see more.
Well, I feel like we're living the setup of network because, like we said, the setup of network goes into what if news were entertainment, and then it goes off the rails and goes completely nuts. I think you could set this. So you don't think we've
gone completely nuts yet?
I don't think we've gone completely. Okay, the choices that Robert Duvall and Faye Dunaway are making right before that final scene, I don't think we've seen that on TV ever.
Okay,
so,
but also what I will say that we didn't take into consideration about this: social media didn't exist. Nor was that in the offing. Patty did not see that.
That's true.
And that has changed the way news is done as well.
That's true. But I think if you went back to network and said, what if it was taking place in 2018? What could we do with it? You could make a crazy-ass movie about just news media and how fucked up it all is.
Let's see who you got.
But let's see who we got. So we're going to start with the Faye Dunaway character, Diana, VP of Entertainment Programming. Who you got?
I got Reese Witherspoon.
Oh, interesting.
Because she's kind of, back in the day, she did that one, was it Election?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Where she was that ambitious young, so this is kind of her all grown up.
Yeah, Tracy Flick was her name.
She's pretty enough so that somebody's going to have an affair with her.
Yep.
But she's also, I can see her just being so focused that this is where I'm going to go, this is how I'm going to do it.
That's an interesting choice because while Election was great, it was a while ago, and most of the time I think we kind of see Reese as a sweet kind of person.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, no. And I think that's the warmth is again, she would have a warmth, whereas I feel like Faye Dunaway in everything she did had a little bit of a coldness about her.
Yeah.
Even though she was beautiful and you'd have an affair with her, there was this coldness. Yep. Whereas with Reese, there's a warmth there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was my choice.
I went a little bit more traditionally icy. Mm-hmm. I think this actress can be warm, but has played a lot of kind of colder, more removed characters. I went with Nicole Kidman for this one.
Now she kind of did something, and why can't I something? She did a movie.
To Die For.
That's it. To Die For. I don't know why I can't. I have a mental block. But yeah, she did that one was kind of similar. She was trying to be a journalist then too.
Although, like Tracy, like she was a much younger woman at that. But it was like in the mid '90s that movie came out.
But that character would do anything to get what she wanted.
So this would be that character all grown
Nicole
up
could
in
totally
a way.
Do it.
Yeah, I think it would be fun. So William Holden, Max, the head of the news department, and kind of our moral compass through this whole thing. Who you got?
I have Idris Elba.
Ooh.
I know.
Fascinating.
I know. I felt like he could totally do the whole, I've done this for years.
Yep.
And, his integrity, very strong that way. He's also very attractive.
Yep.
So I'm like, yeah, I can see, somebody having an affair with him. Big time.
Okay.
But I can just see him coming across. He also has that great voice.
Yep.
So everything that character has, I can see him in.
Yeah, yeah. I went with George Clooney for the William Holden role.
Okay, yeah. Well, they're similar.
Yeah.
They're similar
in a lot of ways.
And I can see that same warmth, that same, I've been around the block, I've done this, and yet still handsome enough that, I can see that.
And I kind of was thinking about that thing we just talked about before the break, where the affair between Max and Diana just seemed a little contrived in this one. I think
very much so.
One of the reasons why their ages were so far apart.
Yes.
And another because there was just nothing about her that seemed all that appealing.
She was very one-dimensional.
And so I wanted a Max who could have some fun repartee with whoever his Diana was. So even though you say this is a bad idea, you shouldn't leave your wife, you could understand why it's happening, and it wouldn't feel so unbelievable to me. Yeah.
And I think the age thing is a thing too, though.
Yeah.
It was too big. So the Peter Finch, Howard, the old news guy. Who do you have for that? That's a big scene stealing.
Yeah,
part.
It's a big lift. So I was thinking of a couple things. I needed someone of a certain age, someone who was handsome enough that at some point in their life they were the face of the network news. And then I was like, who else could do that but also play Rage? And suddenly I got a flash of Training Day, and I thought Denzel Washington could do that.
Wow. See, I would like to see him do that, because that to me would be a little different from anything that I've seen him do.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen him go completely unhinged before.
But there's a couple of his villain roles. Character too.
Yeah.
He and, so it would be Denzel and George would be hanging out, and I can totally see that.
Yeah, and I could see them having a nice relationship where you'd believe that they were old friends.
Right.
But then just kind of feel worse and worse for this guy as he is just taken advantage of and just
That's
insane.
Probably a better choice than mine. I like mine, but at the same time, while I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking that I don't necessarily see this guy hanging out with Idris Elba, which is who I picked for the other part. Ian McKellen.
Great actor.
Is great. He's a little old.
He is.
He's not the same. I mean, obviously, he's way older than Idris, but I can see him as being the guy that we trusted with the news, Walter Cronkite, and then I can see him losing his shit. I mean, Ian
he would play
totally chew the scenery.
Yeah, his would be like more doddering old man having rage fits, and you'd probably watch this thing going, they probably should have let him go a little while ago.
Right.
And so, but you would understand why they were letting him go. But
I like yours better a little bit.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Denzel, you would kind of go, why are they firing Denzel? He seems great.
So, in charge of the network, Robert Duvall. Who do you have?
Well, this is kind of a young upstart who wants to run the network someday.
Right, and then he does eventually get it.
Yeah, and I thought Robert Duvall is such a great asshole on screen, but I always like to play against type a little bit, so I was like, who could we get that would be likable and therefore interesting in this role? And I went with Mark Ruffalo.
Very likable.
Yeah.
And he would totally take this role because he likes interesting things.
Uh-huh.
That would be interesting. I mean, so that's Mark and who's your girl? Nicole would be working together to change the network.
Yeah, to kind of, they would be in cahoots.
I can see that. I can see that. No, he would do that. He would take it on. That would be really, really interesting.
And his main nemesis, therefore, would be George Clooney, and I could see him holding his own with George Clooney.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So I kind of went that way too, sort of, even though we've seen this guy be an asshole, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's still got that boyish, cute thing going on, and I could see he and Reese just saying, "Okay, this is what we're doing. We're taking over the network," and being very he's a little young. Well, I don't know. I think maybe he and Idris. I don't know how old everybody is, but he may be a little younger than Idris.
He still looks young, is the thing about Leonardo. But we know he's older, and we've seen him do like the Wolf of Wall Street and stuff.
That would be an interesting back and forth there. But yeah, that was who I put there. Now for the Ned Beatty, who's the owner of the network and has like a really weird scene in there. I put in Morgan Freeman.
Oh, interesting.
Because I felt like we've seen him play the good guy so often. And the thing is, when you see him on screen, the first thing you do is go, it's Morgan Freeman, yay!
Yeah.
And then you'd have him do this thing.
Sure. And he's played God before, so why shouldn't he play the devil at this point?
Exactly.
But you're right, that when you first meet Ned Beatty in Network, he seems like this nice guy, and then the hammer falls. So I kind of went to a place where who can play charming but also just play evil, and I just went, I went full Voldemort. Ray Fiennes.
Well, okay, you know what? He could totally do it.
Yeah,
he can totally do it because we've seen him in both of those roles. So that's a good one for me. That's a good choice. That's a good pull. Okay, so the wife, Beatrice Straight, the wife of, for me, Idris Elba, and for you, George Clooney. Who do you have in that scene stealing?
I wanted someone who the audience would like immediately, and then who could go through that, all stages of grief in an 8-minute scene. I went with Holly Hunter. Okay. You're not thrilled.
I'm not. Well, it's not either thrill or not thrill. It's just I'm picturing her with George Clooney, and I. She could do it. I don't know. That's a weird one for me. She could do it. Don't get me wrong. She could act it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
I would trust George Clooney and Holly Hunter to, in their first kind of those initial scenes where she's just barely there, to work out some business, to convince me that they were a long, solid couple. As we talked before, would you ever believe that Holly Hunter and Ray Romano would be, utterly believable as a long married couple? Yeah.
I think that Ray Romano would be utterly believable in anything.
Right, but it worked. Yeah. Totally worked. And so I think Holly Hunter could do it.
It would be. I think she could act it. Don't get me wrong. That's just interesting. So I put one Minnie Driver.
Oh, yeah. It'd be nice to see her work again.
Well, no, she's in a TV show.
Is she?
Speechless. Oh my God, you should totally see. Have you not seen? Okay, that's another thing. Speechless, which is about she's a family with one of the kids is disabled.
Okay.
She plays the mom. It's hysterical. It's a sitcom.
Okay. I don't do sitcoms much, so that's probably why I haven't seen it.
Look for it. It's very funny.
Okay, good.
She's wonderful. So she is working. But anyway, I just think that this might be interesting. I could totally see her and Idris Elba working together, though. They're both brilliant, and they could totally do this. But just for giggles, for giggles to see her do it. That would be kind of why I would be doing it. No,
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So anyway, we've recast two
full casts of Network. So now just somebody has to just pick it up and do it.
my final diagnosis is I totally think this is certainly it's watchable. Yes. But I really think people should watch it. I really do think a network should put it on their network television, no commercials or whatever.
Yep.
It is so freaky scary to me. Mm-hmm. And if what you say is true, that we're really just in half of the movie, then we really need to see it now so that it's a warning for us to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. No, I mean, I think that's the inescapable reaction that anyone's going to have watching Network in 2018 is, holy shit, how did they know?
Because it's almost even more so than Wag the Dog.
Yeah.
Because this is not just saying, here's how these political things are happening. This is saying, this is where we're going as a society.
Sure.
And it's actually where we fucking went.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not just, okay, so the news is all fucked up and they're all profit driven. Meh. The fact is that when information is controlled by people who have huge pockets of money to decide what's going to be on the news and what's not, and what we're going to be distracted by and what we're not going to know as a result of those distractions, that really is, we're not nearly as free as we think we are. We only know what we know, and sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
Correct. And we just have to, I think we have to be careful. I think it is the idea of the money, that there are certain things that should not be run by money, and one of them is journalism, which is the fourth estate. And and not to preach, but it goes along with prisons and education. They can't be run by money. They can't be profit centers.
Yeah.
And journalism can't be, or we end up in a dictatorship.
And yet, are we going to take, as a society, would we take a BBC model where we let government money fund our journalism? I don't think Americans would trust the government enough to say,
not now.
Someone's got to pay for it, but at the same time, I think we're stuck. I think we're stuck in this place where journalism is a profit center for these huge 24-hour.
Go back.
But we have to be smart about the news that we consume.
Yeah.
We just have to be really, really smart and actually look for information that disconfirms that invalidates your current opinion about something, and really take it seriously. It's up to us at this point because we're in what we're in, and Network kind of showed us how we got there. And it's just, it gets cray-cray.
It does get cray-cray, but it also gives you, you're talking about your only idea of Faye Dunaway is Mommy Dearest, and that's not fair to her.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Bonnie and Clyde showed us she could do something else.
Right.
This shows us she can do something else. I don't think her character was written all that well.
But I wouldn't mind her wearing a bra.
That's our final thought. Faye, why didn't you wear a bra? That's all we got here at Pop-Oration. I am Eric.
I'm Stacey. Catch us on everywhere you can get podcasts.
And hey, if you listen to us on Apple, go to Apple Podcasts and give us a nice review, or stop by our Facebook page. We now have reviews open on our Facebook page, so you can give us a nice review there too. That would be lovely. And tell a friend.
You've been listening to Pop-Oration with Eric and Stacey, the podcast that dissects popular culture one bloody organ at a time. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other podcast listening site or app. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Pop-Oration Room. Check out our website at popoperationroom.com for all of the podcasts, our blog, swag, and games. Until next time, when we're back in the scrubs.